but those questions pre-show about playoff unit sizing. I just spoke about lines getting sharper. What would you say typically you do to tinker your sports betting when it comes to the playoffs? If it's the same as a regular season, you go first, and I'll explain my side of it as well.
I am okay with the same unit size, but the volume needs to be lower. Like you need to just pick your spots. You can't be when during the regular season you can bet like 10, 15 bets. You can find 10 to 15 good spots a day. During the playoffs, it's more difficult to find great spots because they are sharp. Like some days during the regular season you have like 12 to 15 games and there you just can't do the right lines for everything. You can find some missed lines from the bookies, but when there are 2 to 4 games a day they won't make many mistakes. And not only that, so that's the part, like it's not that bookies made mistakes when there is to 12 to 15 games, but there are so many games to analyze that good bettors miss some good spot because it's difficult to get everything, so they don't correct the lines with their betting. So like lines for the playing opened over 24 hours ago, so but even if they had some mistakes earlier, they just adjusted. I think the AD opening line was 25 or even 24 maybe and a half, and now today we can see 27 and a half. That's, I mean, kind of ridiculous. So yeah.
It's also a case for these where matchups and lineups are a lot more certain, so lines open up earlier. So for our show, the lines open up. A lot of lines are opening up like kind of as we're going live here at 11:20 a.m. Eastern time on the weekdays. But these lines have been up for over a day here, so there's a lot more time as well for these markets to get shaped. So I wouldn't say necessarily they are sharper at close because I guess there's more action going into these specific games. Like you said, there's less matchups for the bookies to focus on, so there's less mistakes made. There's also a lot more time for these markets to evolve and for
Yeah.
sharp bettors to shape these markets in different ways. So,
I
um,
would say like earlier during the regular season, I would say like the sharpest the line get very sharp like 2 hours before the game, maybe hour before the game. Now we have very sharp line like 6 to 7 hours before the game. So like right now the lines are very sharp.
yeah, and
Usually,
like, go ahead.
they are getting sharper. This is the time when are starting to get sharp. Like usually at this time, so you can still find great spots. Now they are already sharp. Like its movement happens earlier, bets go in earlier, they open earlier. So at the time of the show, it's difficult to find good spots, but it can still be possible.
Yes, yes, of course. All throughout the day as well. Like as limits will start to increase as we get closer to time, sportsbooks will get a lot more confident in their numbers. That's when you'll really see some extremely sharp numbers. I would avoid making your bets like right before the game. I mean, I would always avoid that. I would stress that even more at this time of year, just because like so much volume has gone into these numbers that you're not going to find a lot of mistakes. So,
I
uh,
will actually say something interesting. I think someone from my group sent me a message and said that my best win rate is 1 hour before the games.
really,
But yeah, but that's because they 1 hour before the game they add bench players, and there are
wow.
opening lines for bench players, and yeah, and the limits are actually the same as the guys that were posted earlier. So that's kind of interesting spot during the regular season. So they add bench players 30 minutes to 1 hour before the games, and the opening lines for bench players limits are much higher than opening lines for the starters early into the day. So that's interesting.
That makes a lot of sense. For
Yeah.
for today, I'm looking through here on BetSip right now. Like every player who's expected to feature in this game, all lines are posted like everywhere. Bench players, starters, everything. So that's where a lot of that complication is going to play. My side of it for unit size for playoffs. To be honest, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. My process for the playoffs is the exact same as it is for the regular season. I can usually quantify my edge comparing to sharp books. That's my process. So not a very entertaining process at all, but that's my process for the regular season. works really well. For the postseason, yeah, it obviously gets a little bit more difficult with less matchups, but again, I do it all mathematically, and an edge is an edge, whether it's the playoffs or the regular season. So I would stick to the same unit sizing, but I would also, make sure you guys understand that these are sharper. So, as we're saying, try to make sure you get closer to opening lines of the games, of series, of player props for starters. For player props for bench, also going to be kind of a little bit more difficult here. But yeah, the late ads can definitely be a spot where people can look to exploit for these markets. But I mean, overall, like you're always able to beat a sports book. It gets more difficult certain times of year, but if you put in the work, certainly we can get it done. And we're hoping we have that with the official play that we had for today's show. This was a clip taken from our Pick and Roll live show, which you can catch right here on the Board YouTube channel, the NBA content division of the Hammer Betting Network, every weekday around 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like to catch all the live shows or for more clips just like this.